Arthur Schopenhauer quotes: "Talent hits a target no one else can hit. Genius hits a target no one else can see." Compassion is the basis of morality. A man can be himself only so long as he is alone, and if he does not love solitude, he will not love freedom, for it is only when he is alone that he is really free. Mostly it is loss which teaches us about the worth of things. The assumption that animals are without rights and the illusion that our treatment of them has no moral significance is a positively outrageous example of Western crudity and barbarity. Universal compassion is the only guarantee of morality. Every man takes the limits of his own field of vision for the limits of the world. Happiness consists in frequent repetition of pleasure. The person who writes for fools is always sure of a large audience. It is difficult to find happiness within oneself, but it is impossible to find it anywhere else. They tell us that suicide is the greatest piece of cowardice. That suicide is wrong, when it is quite obvious that there is nothing in this world to which every man has a more unassailable title than to his own life and person. Every miserable fool who has nothing at all of which he can be proud, adopts as a last resource pride in the nation to which he belongs. He is ready and happy to defend all its faults and follies tooth and nail, thus reimbursing himself for his own inferiority. Compassion for animals is intimately associated with goodness of character, and it may be confidently asserted that he who is cruel to animals cannot be a good man. One should use common words to say uncommon things. Man can do what he wills, but he cannot will what he wills. That when you're buying books, you're optimistically thinking you're buying the time to read them. Paraphrase of Schopenhauer. Life is a constant process of dying. We forfeit 3/4 of ourselves in order to be like other people. A sense of humor is the only divine quality of man. We will gradually become indifferent to what goes on in the minds of other people when we acquire a knowledge of the superficial nature of their thoughts, the narrowness of their views and of the number of their errors. Whoever attaches a lot of value to the opinions of others pays them too much honor. It is a wise thing to be polite, consequently, it is a stupid thing to be rude. To make enemies by unnecessary and willful incivility, is just as insane a proceeding as to set your house on fire. For politeness is like a counter an avowedly false coin, with which it is foolish to be stingy. A high degree of intellect tends to make a man unsocial. If children were brought into the world by an act of pure reason alone, would the human race continue to exist? Would not a man rather have so much sympathy with the coming generation as to spare it the burden of existence, or at any rate not take it upon himself to impose that burden upon it in cold blood? It would be better if there were nothing. Since there is more pain than pleasure on earth, every satisfaction is only transitory, creating new desires and new distresses, and the agony of the devoured animal is always far greater than the pleasure of the devourer. Treat a work of art like a prince, let it speak to you first. Religion is the masterpiece of the art of animal training, for it trains people as to how they shall think. So the problem is not so much to see what nobody has yet seen, as to think what nobody has yet thought concerning that which everybody sees. Great men are like eagles, and build their nest on some lofty solitude. Without books the development of civilization would have been impossible. They are the engines of change, windows on the world, lighthouses as the poet said erected in the sea of time. They are companions, teachers, magicians, bankers of the treasures of the mind. Books are humanity in print. Hope is the confusion of the desire for a thing with its probability. No rose without a thorn, but many a thorn without a rose. Philosophy is a science, and as such has no articles of faith. Accordingly, in it nothing can be assumed as existing except what is either positively given empirically, or demonstrated through indubitable conclusions. Life swings like a pendulum backward and forward between pain and boredom. We can regard our life as a uselessly disturbing episode in the blissful repose of nothingness. Marrying means to have one's rights and double one's duties. I have not yet spoken my last word about women. I believe that if a woman succeeds in withdrawing from the mass, or rather raising herself from above the mass, she grows ceaselessly and more than a man. Every parting gives a foretaste of death, every reunion a hint of the resurrection. The life of every individual, viewed as a whole and in general, and when only its most significant features are emphasized, is really a tragedy, but gone through in detail it has the character of a comedy. The safest way of not being very miserable is not to expect to be very happy. Pleasure is never as pleasant as we expected it to be, and pain is always more painful. The pain in the world always outweighs the pleasure. If you don't believe it, compare the respective feelings of two animals, one of which is eating the other. Buying books would be a good thing if one could also buy the time to read them, but as a rule the purchase of books is mistaken for the appropriation of their contents. If I maintain my silence about my secret, it is my prisoner; if I let it slip from my tongue, I am its prisoner. The shortness of life, so often lamented, may be the best thing about it.